This is Dolynny TV, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Welcome back to another edition of the channel as we get set to discuss some more Edmonton Oilers things. But today, finally getting into our first little preview of the 23-24 season here on the channel as we get set up to discuss what I'm thinking the season standings might look like by the end of the 2024 calendar for this season. So friends, welcome aboard. Glad to have you. If at any time you are new to the channel and you want to consider hitting that subscribe button, I encourage you to do so. That's as simple and short and sweet as I will keep it this afternoon, because we are going to have a long way to go in this one. I promise you that. It's going to take me a while to upload this, so it's about 12:30 as I record. Probably won't be out until 1:30 at this point, so that's pretty crazy. But hey, you know what? We'll get through it and we'll battle through. So friends, I want to quickly reference this right here for you. Obviously, this is going to be one of those videos. I'm just going to sink back here. No, that's not going to work for audio levels, so let me come back up front. You're going to get to see this amazing hairline of mine, I guess you could say. So we're going to look at the standings. That's what I promised to write off, the Pacific Division standings, kind of my predictions for where the teams will be sitting by the end of the season. This is last year's standings, where you have Vegas with 111 points in first. The Oilers, who just needed a couple of things to happen at the end of the year, and they could have been in first themselves, at 109 points. The Los Angeles Kings at 104. The Seattle Kraken at 100. Calgary at 93. Vancouver at 83. San Jose at 60. And Anaheim at 58. So this is kind of where everything's shaken out from last year, right? Anaheim had a very bad year. Ended up drafting Leo Carlson. San Jose gets rewarded as well. It gets a good draft pick in there. Vancouver kind of middle of the pack. Looking to improve off of last year. Obviously maybe not be as much of a dumpster fire as they were last year, to quote it lightly. Calgary looking obviously to be less of a dumpster fire. Seattle looking to repeat what they did. Los Angeles hoping they don't fall off from what they did last year and the year previous. Edmonton looking to improve. That's the only place we have to go. A fall back to third or fourth in the division standings is unacceptable at this point. And the Vegas Golden Knights looking to hold steady in that number one spot. So that's kind of where we're shaking out, right? Obviously, you see how that all shakes out. So we'll move on to this nice fancy graphic I've done for myself. I'm going to tell you, Patrick would be really jealous that I made a graphic for myself. I mean, he's taught me his ways, and well, let's see how it works out for us in this video, shall we? The Pacific Division 23-24 season standings as predicted by yours truly. Obviously don't have points because points are a crapshoot because of shootout losses and stuff like that. But I do have percentages I believe the teams will be in the playoffs. Of course, I have done this. This will be year number 6 of doing this whole thing. So trust me, I'm not going to be stupid enough to say the Oilers are a 100% lock to make the playoffs, because that is how you screw yourself over early and often all year long. So I do have the Oilers at number 1. This is obviously, you see how tight it is with the Vegas Golden Knights in terms of that playoffs percentage. Playoffs percentage really doesn't dictate the season standings according to this chart, but I would not be surprised to see the Oilers 1-2, whether it be the Golden Knights on top or the Oilers on top of the Pacific Division. I am betting it would be both of those teams, if anyone. So for right now, I've got the Oilers on top because you've heard my reasonings in other videos. It's simply, for the Oilers, one of those things where they should be able to roll right from the start of the year all the way to the end of the year. When a goaltender goes cold, the other guy steps up and gets hot. That's exactly what we're expecting. Secondary to that, Connor McDavid, 160-point season, not unheard of now. Well, guess what? I just don't see how you can lose with a returning roster like we have many games over the course of the NHL regular season, so long as you show up every night and do your job. We had that discussion in another video. So right now, currently I have the Oilers in first. Like I said, the Vegas Golden Knights could very well be in first, and that's why I give them the similar playoff percentages, because they're both dead locks to be top of the division this year. That is because, well, you look at the Seattle Kraken, they are my next best playoff lock at 90% according to my brain numbers I threw together, I guess you could say, and I have them moving up to third in the Pacific Division this year. It's because I really don't expect any changes out of the Seattle Kraken. This is the big thing here. I expect Seattle Kraken to be pretty much the exact same team they were last year, do the exact same things they did last year, and produce the same results. That's quite simply really all there is to it. And obviously their 90% playoff percentage is not a guarantee that they'll finish third by any means, but again, they could very well settle into that 4 hole as well. And that's kind of where it all shakes out for me. Is I think the Seattle Kraken are going to be this team in the Pacific Division that, similar to the Los Angeles Kings over the past few years, are that team that kind of settles into that middle of the pack situation within the Pacific Division. Now the Kings are still in there at number 4. I give them a lesser playoffs percentage or playoff chance, whatever you want to say, simply because I don't know if I'm sold on their goaltending. Phoenix Copley and Cam Talbot, that kind of seems a little bit risky at this point to me. Obviously, we've seen Cam Talbot's career kind of change here over the past little bit for them. And at the same rate, too, I believe they let go of some guys over the course of this past free agency as well. So Cam Talbot in net for the LA Kings now. Obviously, too, they've got some young up-and-comers coming through that very well could be useful for them. But again, I don't know, right? You got Gavrikov signed, so they had to make some room for some people on the roster, or for Gavrikov by getting rid of some people on the roster. Drew Doughty's another year old. So is Anze Kopitar. Victor Arvidsson even's another year old, and he's already in his 30s. So I'm kind of just looking at it here from the performance of the LA Kings. Is I'm expecting them to take a step back. Does that mean they don't make the playoffs? No, I've got them at a 60% chance. So I'd say they're very likely to make it. Again, though, if they settle into that 4 slot, you're at the mercy of what the Central Division does. And you got to believe the Central Division is going to be coming hot this year. You've got teams over there that did pretty well last year, and I expect them to do very well again this year. So that's where Los Angeles kind of falls victim to, and maybe a little bias against them as well, beating them in the playoffs 2 years in a row, don't mind me. But they fall victim to the fact that the bottom 4 teams in the division also have to have a playoff percentage in my mind, because you just never know what's going to happen. And then as well, what happens in the Central Division will dictate what happens to the 4 hole, potentially 5 hole in the Pacific Division. Get it? Got it. Good. So the overall season standings, I expect the LA Kings to be in the top 4. That's a simple summary of what I'm trying to say. Playoffs, whole nother story. The Calgary Flames, this is kind of the thing. I expect them to be, and this is where you can read the playoffs percentage as a dictation of their season. Seriously, I expect them to be a bubble team this year, right? That team that is fighting to the last game to get into the playoffs, that's who I expect them to be this season in the Pacific Division. Obviously, playoffs 50-50 because, again, you just, right, if you're going down the last game, you win, lose, you never know what's going to happen. But at the same rate, too, I expect them to take steps forward out of the kind of dark cloud they were under last season with Daryl Sutter and everybody leaving. And obviously, too, when they figure out who's leaving and where everyone's going, that will dictate if they are going to be a team that goes to the playoffs or a team that is in the bottom half of the standings in the Pacific Division. So we will wait and see what happens there for the Calgary Flames, but I expect them to be kind of that bubble team. That's why I've got them sitting in 5th, is they could still make the playoffs in the 5 hole in the Pacific Division, but at the same rate, too, I really don't know if they're going to improve, go back, what's going to happen with all their UFAs. I don't need to talk about the Flames. I don't even understand the Oilers most days. The Anaheim Ducks, I expect them to take a step forward this year. That is a big thing. I believe the Ducks are ready to start moving ahead and get back up in the standings. I give them a 20% playoff percentage just because I expect them to be better, but I don't expect them to be a playoff caliber club, if that makes sense, right? I expect them to move up in the standings, but in terms of the playoffs, their chances are likely not very good at 20% is what I'm giving them there. The Vancouver Canucks, though, this is a weird one, and this is the one I had to sit here and kind of go back and forth on as I was building this list. You know, the Oilers, the Vegas Golden Knights, I said they're pretty much locks, right? You got to give that 5% allowance in case something happens, but for the Vancouver Canucks, they're the only team where their position on the chart is actually in the playoffs higher than the standings, right? That's kind of the weird part here. But the playoffs percentage, I've got the Canucks at 35%. I really don't know what to expect from Vancouver this year. Obviously, Rick Tocchet's taken over the team. He had them playing very well at the end of last year compared to how they were playing previously in the season, I guess you could say. They finished within, about 12 points of the playoffs this past year. They're a team that's got a guy like Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes, right? They got Thatcher Demko. They've got guys that are absolutely beautiful, great players for a roster trying to make the playoffs. But at the same rate, too, do they have the guys that are going to get them over the hump, right? They signed Teddy Bluger. Brock Besser, does he return to form? He's had a lot going on. I don't know what's going to happen there. Obviously, as well, Connor Garland, is he going to take a step forward for them? Niels Hoglander as well. Philip Hronek now on the blue line for them. You look at this roster, it's just kind of a question. What are they going to be capable of doing? And obviously, I think they're going to be able to do something. The JT Miller, how much is that going to be a distraction all season long for them? But I really do believe there is something to be said for this Vancouver Canucks team surprising a couple of people within the NHL season this year. So that's why I've got their playoffs percentage higher than really where they are, right? Seventh overall in the Pacific Division. That means your playoffs percentage should be 0, but I'm leaving a lot of room for things to happen here, and I believe the Canucks could be one of those teams that makes something happen from a team that you don't necessarily expect something to happen. And then, of course, there's the San Jose Sharks, and just because you just never know what's going to happen, similar to the Oilers and Golden Knights at 95% playoff percentage, I do not foresee the Sharks at all putting up good hockey this season. They'll trade Erik Karlsson at some point, probably during training camp, and that will be the end of their year before puck drop on opening night for them. So I've got their playoffs percentage at 10%. I mean, if somebody gives up something sizable for Erik Karlsson in terms of NHL roster bodies, and the Sharks somehow go on this little run, sure. But I'm pretty sure the San Jose Sharks are going to settle into the 8th spot in the Pacific Division this year. So one more time to wrap it all up, because I don't want to beat up on the Sharks too much. The Oilers up top, Golden Knights in second, could be on top. Seattle Kraken probably solidly in that 3 spot, if not the 4 spot. The LA Kings likely in a playoff spot, at least in the top 4. The Calgary Flames, if there's a 5 spot in the Pacific Division that makes the playoffs, it will be them. The Anaheim Ducks will do better this year, but unlikely to make the playoffs. The Vancouver Canucks, the team in the division that could surprise people depending on what the results are early and often for them. And the San Jose Sharks, expect them, my friends, to suck. All right, I'm Tyson. This is Dolynny TV. Thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon. Really appreciate you being along for what is now a 13-minute edition of Dolynny TV. And that's enough of me. I've had enough of listening to me, so I can imagine you have as well. Go back to your Saturday. It's 25 degrees here in southern Alberta today, and let me tell you, I plan on getting out there and enjoying the back deck. So I'm up on, gone.